Well done. Well done. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. We have some announcements we should make. Craig, you want to tell us about this class? Yes. Oh, yes, you got to get one of these.
Okay, you're right. All right. It was almost 2 years ago that we had a study group. And there were, I don't know, 8 or 10 or 12 of us, and we're hoping to gather people again on Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock in the little classroom just beyond the nursery, right through here. And this time our book will be The Message of the Psalms by Walter Brueggemann, who is a good German-American scholar who's written prolifically, churns out book after book. But this is a really wonderful exposition of the Psalms, and so I invite you to join us. Sometimes called the prayer book of the Bible, and the literature is really quite varied. So I hope you'll join us starting on Wednesday, March the 2nd. And copies of the book are available this morning, and they're on the little table over here. Okay?
Thank you. Okay, now let's see. Other announcements we should be making. Yes, I think we have a birthday.
His birthday was Friday, 17.
17, wow, congratulations. And he came to be with us, and his basketball team, Goffstown, he was on the JV this year. The varsity team is playing for the state championship this morning at 10 o'clock. So during prayer time, be sure and say a silent prayer for the Goffstown basketball team. Who are they playing? Is it Trinity? Trinity. Pretty good Catholic school there in Manchester. Okay, other announcements. We're going to sing Happy Birthday in just a moment. Okay, I think a moment has come. Let's do it. And hearing no other announcements, we will begin the service with our morning prelude. We gather to worship the God of eternity, who created all that is, who has been with us from the beginning of time and will be with all of his children forever. And we begin as we sing our opening hymn, which is number 809. We have a unison reading this morning. It's from Deuteronomy, and it is the farewell address of Moses to the people of Israel after leading them for some 40 years through the wilderness after they came out of Egypt. It's up at the top of the announcement side of the bulletins there. So let us read Moses' words together. See, I set before you today life and prosperity, death and destruction. For I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, and to keep his commands, decrees, and laws. Then you will live and increase, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land you are entering to possess. But if your heart turns away, and if you are not obedient, and if you're drawn away to bow down to other gods and worship them, I declare to you this day that you will certainly be destroyed. You will not live long in the land you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live, and that you may love the Lord your God, listen to his voice, and hold fast to him. For the Lord is your life, and he will give you many years in the land he swore to give to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Forever.
And let us again, from the announcement side of the bulletins, affirm our faith with the words of James Carroll. And let us read together. Jesus, the Jew from Nazareth, is a living expression of the inexpressible God. He is the Christ, Son of Man, according to the Scriptures. He is present to the world the way meaning is present in the Word. Just as a word points not to itself, but to its meaning, so Jesus Christ, Son of God, points to one whom he calls Father. In that way, as one of us, he is the Word of God, whose meaning comes clear. The unknowable one, therefore, can be known. Because God is not an enemy, but a friend, we need not be afraid. Because God completes what God begins, death is not the end, but a beginning, wholly undefined. Because God is faithful, creation has a purpose, and its name is history. Imitators of Jesus Christ, we want mainly to be kind and true, taking heart from our dear companions on the way. And we say with those who go before and who come after, Amen. So may it be.
In the darkest hour, when I cannot breathe, fear is on my chest, the weight of the world on me. Everything is crashing down, everything I have known. When I wonder if I'm all alone, I remember you have always been faithful to me. I remember even when my own eyes could not see, you were there, always there. I will lift my eyes, even in the pain, above all the lies. I know you can make a way. I have seen giants fall, I have seen mountains move, I have seen waters part because of you. I remember you have always been faithful to me. I remember even when my own eyes could not see, you were there, always there. I just can't thinking about it. I can't stop thinking about. I can't stop thinking about your goodness, goodness. I can't stop thinking about. I can't stop thinking about. I can't stop thinking about your goodness, goodness. I can't stop thinking about. I can't stop thinking about. I can't stop thinking about your goodness, goodness. I can't stop thinking about. I can't stop thinking about. I can't stop thinking about your goodness, goodness.
Beautifully done. Beautifully done. Our scripture reading, this is President's Day weekend, so I picked the last words of one of the great leaders of the Old Testament, Moses, and now the scripture reading are the last words of another one of the great figures of the Old Testament, King David, who was a remarkable gentleman, both a warrior and also a poet, if you will, who wrote many of those words in the book of the Psalms, which we're about to begin an adult study of on Wednesday. So here's David's last words from 2 Samuel, the 23rd chapter, beginning with the first verse. Now these are the last words of David, the oracle of David, the son of Jesse, the oracle of the man who was raised on high, the anointed of the God of Jacob, the sweet psalmist of Israel. The Spirit of the Lord speaks by me. His word is upon my tongue. The God of Israel has spoken. The Rock of Israel has said to me, when one rules justly over men, ruling in the fear of God, he dawns on them like the morning light, like the sun shining forth upon a cloudless morning, like rain that makes grass to sprout from the earth. Yea, does not my house stand so with God? For he has made with me an everlasting covenant, ordered in all things and secure. For will he not cause to prosper all my help and my desire? But godless men are all like thorns that are thrown away, for they cannot be taken with the hand, but the man who touches them arms himself with iron and the shaft of a spear, and they are utterly consumed with fire. And here ends our reading. Now, for our children's sermon, I would just say a few words about presidents, because this is President's Day weekend. Now, first of all, let me apologize to school kids, because you don't get tomorrow off, at least in New Hampshire, right? Because Massachusetts has tomorrow off, and this week, and then we get the week after. But when I was a kid, we used to get 2 holidays in February. Remember that? And so I always knew these dates from when I was a kid. February 12th, of course, is the birthday of Abraham Lincoln, and February the 22nd, the birthday of George Washington. So you kind of remember that. But I just thought I'd talk to kids for a moment about presidents, because presidents, we have a different system. We don't have a king who becomes the leader just because of his the family he's born into, or a queen who becomes a leader because she becomes queen from a family she's born into. Nor do we have people who fight with swords and the mightiest one becomes the ruler. But we have people that sometimes fight with words and take on a huge job. I mean, being president of the United States is, I'm sure, a great honor, but I'm sure it's a tremendous burden. Because if you take seriously a country you love and have asked you to lead, that's not an easy thing to do. So I just want to mention to kids, there are some really great presidents, and I hope they still study them in school. Mr. Mudrick used to, in 3rd grade, here in New Boston, do such a great job with presidents. I remember our grandkids went to school here, and let's see now, Derek was Calvin Coolidge. So we took him up to Plymouth, Vermont, which is where Calvin Coolidge is from, and where he was sworn in as president. He was vice president when the president was on the West Coast, Warren Harding, and died. And so the vice president, once the word got back to Plymouth, Vermont, which might have taken a while in those days, somewhere around 1923 or 22, and his father was a local government official and swore his son in, took the oath, gave him the oath of President of the United States. So I said to Derek, our grandson, when he was in Mr. Mudrick's class, we'll go up and see where Calvin Coolidge is from. Trouble was when it was only March or something that I guess Mr. Mudrick's class was doing this, maybe February. We went up there and the town was closed, literally closed. So then a couple years later, our granddaughter Katie had Mr. Mudrick for a teacher, and she became Franklin Roosevelt. So I thought this was pretty exciting. So I said, we'll take a trip to Hyde Park in New York State, where Franklin Roosevelt lived. We went to Hyde Park, and guess what? They were doing repairs. It was closed. I think probably Franklin Roosevelt was the most famous of the two. And Calvin Coolidge, it was kind of appropriate it was closed because he was known as being Silent Calvin. Silent Calvin. He didn't talk much. In fact, there's a story that when he was president, they were having a dinner at the White House, and the lady was seated next to him, and she turned to him and said, Mr. President, I have a wager with a friend of mine that I can get you to say more than 2 words to me tonight at this dinner. He looked at her, he said, you lose. And that was the only thing he said, supposedly. So presidents are very human. But you know, presidents are most successful when people, even if they disagree with them, treat them with respect and courtesy, because it's a very special honor to be chosen to lead the free world, so to speak. Our friend who spoke in this pulpit a couple times, George McGovern, told me that to run for president, you really have to be an egomaniac, because you have to believe you're best suited to lead the best nation on earth. So I just say to kids, I don't know if any of you think about growing up and you could be president, but it's true. Probably our greatest president was Abraham Lincoln. He grew up in a log cabin. He went to school 1 year. He had a stepmother that really taught him to read, but anyone can hope to make the world a better place, and you do it. I mean, very few of us will ever think about seriously, I guess, becoming president, but you do it by supporting the good things a president does and respectfully disagreeing if you think what is being proposed by a president is not the best thing for our country. But I think we respect the office of President of the United States a lot, and there are some great historical stories, some of which I'll share in the sermon today about presidents and other leaders. There are some other people that have been great leaders that have not been presidents. Let us sing our second hymn, number 808.
Thank you.
By the way, I meant to add into the children's sermon that if you're a girl listening to this, never fear, because even though we have not had a woman president, I'm sure in the lifetime of most of those listening, there will be many. So we're making some progress in that regard. Well, I was reading in the paper the other day that Apple is designing a new automatic car, but they're having trouble installing Windows. Now, maybe somebody can explain that joke to me, but I know most people are going, Well, President's Day is a day to celebrate and to contemplate leadership. And so we heard two farewell addresses, one from Moses, who told the people that you're going to be successful as a people if you follow God's laws. And that was basically what we call the covenant of the Old Testament. That God would be the God of Israel, and as long as they followed his laws, they wouldn't get into trouble. When they strayed from those, there would be, if you'll excuse the term, hell to pay. And then the last words of King David. And boy, there was an interesting gentleman who I'm sure Craig will be sharing some thoughts about and get our thoughts as well on King David. I mean, a great warrior. There's no question about that. And a very wise gentleman at points, and a poet. That's an unusual combination of a warrior and a poet. And also very human. And we won't go into length at this story because I've done that before, but I mean, the story of David and Bathsheba and the prophet Nathan is a fascinating story of how very human King David was. And I think that reminds us that presidents and other leaders are often quite human, but they're really good ones. Also, it seems at their best have empathy and have compassion and have a sense of vision, which they can use in getting our country through some very difficult times. Now, I'm going to steal a lot of ideas in this sermon from this book. I recommend the book. In case they're watching, we're copyrighted, okay, or if I read some of them. But John Meacham, who's a wonderful historian, I think he frequently appears on MSNBC, but he's on other places. And just a tremendous historian of the day, and he wrote a book called The Soul of America, The Battle for Our Better Angels, and I will read you a couple portions of that. But let's, first of all, think about the office of the presidency. How does a president know what to do? If you look at the Constitution, there's not a big, long section about the presidency. Of the three branches of government, of course, the Congress, the legislative, the Supreme Court, the judicial, the presidency is probably the least defined in the Constitution. And there's one reason for that. James Madison, who wrote a lot of the Constitution with some help, and the other people at the Constitutional Convention thought that we needed a kind of an executive to run the country. But exactly what did that mean? Well, they weren't too sure, but they knew that the fellow that was going to be the executive would know what to do. And they all knew it would be George Washington, and it was. And so they left the role of the president sort of undefined, and they figured George Washington would fill it in, and he did. It's a wonder George Washington did all the things he did while he was busy sleeping at all the places he slept, right, if you think about that. But he was a remarkable gentleman. Now, in the course of our history, there have been many bad times. I know that there's been a lot of commentary about how bad times have been in the last couple of years, and they have been. But John Meacham says this about coming together in the introduction to his book. He says, "The measure of our political and cultural health cannot be whether we all agree on all things at all times. We don't, and we won't. Disagreement and debate, including ferocious disagreement and exhausting debate, are hallmarks of American politics. As Jefferson noted, divisions of opinion have defined free society since the days of Greece and Rome. The art of politics lies in the manufacturing of a workable consensus for a given time, not unanimity. This is an art, not a science. There is no algorithm that can tell a president or a people what to do. Like life, history is contingent and conditional. By the way, they should teach this book in school. I don't know if the New Hampshire legislature would approve, but I guess I'm all right to make quotes about it. Bad times have been plenty, as Meacham points out there, but we have had leaders who have stepped up and helped us get through them. Certainly, one of the most remarkable speeches in American history was the inaugural address of Abraham Lincoln. He took office in March of 1861, and states were seceding or preparing to secede from the Union all around him. And what does Lincoln do? He calls on people to stay together. He appeals to what he called the better angels of our nature. Sadly, they did not follow his invitation. The South left, and there were 4 horrible years of bloodshed and civil war. Then there was Franklin Roosevelt, just to take another example, who takes office in 1933. Again, I think still in March. In fact, there had been a plot, which I just read a book about recently, to try to keep Roosevelt from taking office, because there were those that thought he was a socialist or a communist or whatever and would ruin the country. But here were people afraid. I mean, almost a third of America had lost their jobs in this horrible depression. The president at the time, Hoover, he didn't really know what to do. I'm not blaming him, but he didn't know what to do, and people were afraid. And what did Franklin Roosevelt say to them? There is nothing to fear but fear itself. We're going to get through this together. And he instituted the fireside chats, where people would sit next to their radios and listen to the president once every week or two, comfort them, and give them hope in the midst of a very bad time. Another example would be Ronald Reagan, probably one of the greatest communicators we had as president. He could deliver lines. He was an actor to begin with. And I still remember his speech after the Challenger tragedy. Remember that, when Krista McAuliffe of New Hampshire, a teacher, was going to be the first teacher in space, and the capsule exploded, and all the people on it were killed, and Ronald Reagan addressed the nation that night. And he gave great words of comfort after that tragedy. The presidency, I think, calls for both comfort and insight, and it often is pretty directly intertwined with theology. The president is almost like a preacher at times, and if you have the right person. Now, in our lifetime, there have been some pretty scary things. Maybe the tops on the list was the events of Tuesday, September 11th, 2001, when the planes were hijacked by terrorists, and 2 of them flown into the World Trade Center, the other one brought down in Pennsylvania. It was a horrible time. 3 days after that, President George W. Bush gave a speech, and here is Meacham's introduction to that, and then the words of George Bush. 3 days after the terrorist attacks of Tuesday, September 11th, 2001, with thousands dead and many missing, never to be found, President Bush climbed the steps of the lectern at Washington's National Cathedral to speak of America's resolve. But he was pastoral too, acknowledging the loss of the hour and summoning the forces of love. Our purpose as a nation is firm, Bush said, continuing. Yet our wounds as a people are recent and unhealed and lead us to pray. In many of our prayers this week, there is a searching and an honesty. At St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York on Tuesday, a woman said, "I prayed to God to give us a sign that he is still here." There are prayers that help us last through the day or endure the night. There are prayers of friends and strangers that give us strength for the journey. And there are prayers that yield our will to a will greater than our own. John Meacham says, he paused, and then Bush said, quote, "This world he created is of moral design. Grief and tragedy and hatred are only for a time. Goodness, remembrance, and love have no ends. And the Lord of life holds all who die and all who mourn." Those are the words of George W. Bush. And then a few years after that, our first black president went down to South Carolina, to Charleston. Meacham says, in Charleston, South Carolina, in 2015, late in the presidency of Barack Obama, a young white supremacist armed with a .45 caliber Glock pistol murdered 9 innocents during a Bible study group at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church. As the president eulogized one of those victims, the Reverend Clementa Pinckney, Obama spoke of hope and hate and history. According to the Christian tradition, grace is not earned, the president said. Grace is not merited. It is not something we deserve. Rather, grace is the free and benevolent favor of God as manifested in the salvation of sinners and the bestowal of blessings. Grace, as a nation, out of this terrible tragedy, God has visited grace upon us, for he has allowed us to see where we've been blind. He has given us the chance, where we've been lost, to find our best selves. Then Meacham says action had to follow the words. Back to Obama. For too long, we've been blind to the way past injustices continue to shape the present. Perhaps we see that now. Perhaps this tragedy causes us to ask some tough questions about how we can permit so many of our children to languish in poverty or attend dilapidated schools or grow up without prospects for a job or for a career. Perhaps it causes us to examine what we're doing to cause some of our children to hate. Then suddenly, unexpectedly, Obama began to sing the old hymn, "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see." Obama sang that very beautifully as well. Then Meacham says, progress, redemption even, was possible in this hour of grief, said the president. Obama said, we may not have earned it, this grace, with our rancor and complacency and short-sightedness and fear of each other, but we got it all the same. He gave it to us anyway. He's once more given us grace. But it is up to us now to make the most of it, to receive it with gratitude, and to prove ourselves worthy of this gift. And then finally, the events of 1 week, 1968. You know, those of us that are old enough to remember 1968 with some clarity, it was a pretty bleak year. The Vietnam War was at its height. There was a very contentious presidential campaign underway. And then we lost Martin Luther King. And then we lost Robert Kennedy. And then the Democratic Convention erupted in violence in the streets of Chicago. It was a tough time. So let me take you back, first of all, with the help of Mr. Meacham, to March the 31st, 1968, 2 weeks before Easter. The setting was splendid. The congregation rapt, the preacher at ease. On the morning of the same day that Lyndon Johnson made his evening announcement about withdrawing from the 1968 campaign, Martin Luther King was in Washington to offer a Lenten sermon at the National Cathedral. Easter was 2 weeks away, but King's mind was more on the world beyond the cathedral's splendid stained glass than it was on the details of the Christian calendar. Standing in the ornate Canterbury pulpit, gazing out across the sprawling nave, King summoned his listeners to the hard work of the gospel. We are tied together in a single garment of destiny, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, King said, and whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. For some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be unless you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be unless I am what I ought to be. This is the way God's universe is made. This is the way it is structured. And John Meacham says he would be dead before the week was out. History was moving quickly as King preached among the hymns and the psalms of the Episcopal liturgy. In the shadow of the Hilltop Cathedral at the White House, the president was preparing for his evening address to the nation. And by the time Sunday worshipers gathered again in the sacred space of the National Cathedral, King would be martyred by an assassin's bullet outside room 306 at the Lane Motel in Memphis. King's earthly journey thus ended as his public life had begun back in Montgomery, at the uneasy but essential intersection of faith, politics, and history. His was a life lived between different, though sometimes overlapping worlds of black and white, of good and evil, of the kingdom of men and the kingdom of heaven. Buffeted by the demands of the present, King bore witness to a message that was, in St. Augustine's phrase, ever ancient, ever new, an insistence that the testimony of the prophets and the examples of Christ could march from the past into what King called the fierce urgency of now in order to liberate the future. King was not perfect, but then no man is. To know him is to know American history. From the bus boycott in Montgomery to the showdowns in Birmingham, from the I Have a Dream speech to the struggle for voting rights in Selma, from his anti-poverty, poor people's campaign to his opposition to the Vietnam War, King spoke with the voice of a prophet, urging a nation to repent and return to righteousness. The movement was about much more than King, but it's a recurrent fact of history that human beings seek apostles, which means messenger, who embody widely shared creeds. In the battle against Jim Crow and for economic justice in the 1950s and 60s, King was that apostle, and he will be a source of fascination and veneration as long as the American story is told. In that last Sunday sermon in Washington in 1968, King spoke of America and her obligations. He said, "To whom much is given, the scripture tell us, much is expected, of individuals and of nations. One day," he said, "we will have to stand before the King of history, and we will talk in terms of things we've done. Yes, we will be able to say we built gargantuan bridges to span the seas. We built gigantic buildings to kiss the skies. Yes, we made our submarines to penetrate oceanic depths. We brought into being many other things with our scientific and technological power. Meacham says it was a message that united politics and faith. King continued, "It seems that I can hear the God of history saying, 'That was not enough. For I was hungry, and ye fed me not. I was naked, and ye clothed me not. I was devoid of a decent sanitary house to live in, and ye provided no shelter for me. And consequently, you cannot enter the kingdom of greatness. If you do it for the least of these, my brethren, you did it unto me.'" That's the question facing America today. And I'll come back to that day, but I want to share one other quote here, and that is Lyndon Johnson, who I think probably doesn't get the credit he deserves for the president he was. And he was an interesting gentleman, but he actually was responsible really for the passage of the Civil Rights Act and then the Voting Rights Act after becoming president due to an assassin's bullet that was fired off in Dallas, Texas. He was in the car, 2 cars back. In 1965, another bleak time when John Lewis and a bunch of people were beaten on the bridge starting a voting rights in Selma, Alabama, trying to cross the bridge to get people the right to vote. And then Lyndon Johnson stepped in. The march was stopped. They didn't march from Selma to Montgomery because they'd been beaten back by National Guard troops in Alabama. Lyndon Johnson summoned the governor of Alabama, George Wallace, to the White House and browbeat him, as only Lyndon Johnson could do, into permitting those marchers to be protected and to march to the state capitol in Montgomery for voting rights. And then Johnson gave a speech, and it doesn't get the attention it deserves. So let me just share this with you. Here's Meacham's. This was March the 15th, 1965. So we've gone back a couple of years. Lyndon Johnson entered the chamber of the House of Representatives with a purposeful stride. He did not pause to shake many hands as he walked to the well. He had work to do. Standing at the rostrum was Vice President Humphrey and Speaker of the House John McCormick behind him. The president opened a folder. The address had been written on deadline by Richard Goodwin. Know that name? Young man that worked for John F. Kennedy, stayed on to work with Lyndon Johnson as a speechwriter. You might have heard of his now widow, but wife for many years, Doris Kearns Goodwin, another great historian. Here's what Johnson said. First, Meacham points out he began to speak. He did so slowly. President Johnson's public cadences could be unctuous, even ponderous, as he sought to infuse his public rhetoric with solemnity. This night, the tone was just right. He seemed for once, for a public man, free from political calculations or pragmatic consideration. "I speak tonight for the dignity of man and the destiny of democracy," Johnson said. "I urge every member of both parties, Americans of all religions and all colors, from every section of this country to join me in that cause." He went on. "At times, history and fate meet at a single time in a single place to shape a turning point in man's unending search for freedom. So it was at Lexington and Concord. So it was a century ago at Appomattox. So it was last week in Selma, Alabama. In our time, we have come to live with moments of great crisis. Our lives have been marked with debate about great issues, issues of war and peace, issues of prosperity and depression, but rarely in any time does an issue lay bare the secret heart of America itself. Rarely are we met with a challenge not to our growth or abundance, our welfare or our security, but rather to the values and the purposes and the meaning of our beloved nation. The issue of equal rights for American Negroes is such an issue, and we should should we defeat every enemy, should we double our wealth and conquer the stars and still be unequal to this issue, then we will have failed as a people and as a nation. For with a country as with a person, what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Meacham. Here, for the first time, the lawmakers and the guests were moved from reverie to applause. The evoking of Scripture. Johnson was quoting the words of Jesus from the Gospel of St. Mark. They resonated. The president continued, "There is no Negro problem. There is no Southern problem. There is no Northern problem. There is only an American problem. And when we are met here today as Americans, not as Democrats or Republicans, we are met here as Americans to solve that problem." And they did, to some extent. They made a big step forward. They passed the Civil Rights Act, then they went on to pass a Voting Rights Act, thanks to the efforts of Lyndon Johnson. I think President Johnson got it wrong in Vietnam, but he certainly did wonders for our country in the days of civil rights. So let us now return for a final couple of words to 1968. 4 days after Martin Luther King gave his last sermon, he gave a speech in Memphis the night before he was killed, but on April the 3rd, but he gave his last sermon at the National Cathedral, and some of those words we just listened to. But we now return, let us return to 1968 and that horrible evening when Martin Luther King was killed. By Thursday evening, Meacham tells us, Martin Luther King was dead. When the president learned of King's assassination, he telephoned Coretta Scott King and appealed to the nation for calm. The next day, Friday, April the 5th, the president attended a memorial service for the slain King at the National Cathedral. On returning to the White House, Johnson announced a national day of mourning. The dream of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., the president said, has not died with him. And then John Meacham's next paragraph, and my last one here is this. On the road to Indianapolis, on the evening King was shot, Robert Kennedy, who was seeking the Democratic presidential nomination, learned about the assassination from R.W. Apple, Jr., a reporter for the New York Times. Wearing an overcoat that had belonged to his brother Jack, RFK broke the news to an inner-city crowd. He concluded his thoughts with these words. What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another and a feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black. I think those words of Bobby Kennedy's ring as true today as they did on that sad evening of April the 4th, 1968. Just some words to, I hope, make us ponder a little bit on President's Day, what our country is about, what it has been about, how it's gotten through difficult days, and how it has hope for getting through more difficult days and becoming a better place for us all. And let us bow together in prayer. Gracious God, we thank you for those who have led our country, be they in the White House or on the streets, people who have brought hope and vision, compassion with a call for action, those who have taken risks politically and certainly both for political leaders and for moral leaders like Dr. King have taken risks with their own safety and their own lives to bring your teachings into evidence in our body politic. Help us to ponder the words that we have heard and help us to take time to think about how we can disagree without being so disagreeable, how we can love our nation together even though we don't agree on courses of action, and how we can truly embody in our place and in our time the teachings of Jesus and the Old Testament prophets with whom Jesus identified and tried to make the world a more loving, compassionate, and peaceful place. Forgive us when we are afraid to speak out. Forgive us when we take the wrong side at times. Forgive our humanity, Lord, and inspire us to try again and help us to try to build, even with those we disagree, a better place, especially for those who suffer from discrimination of any sort, from the pain of poverty, and from a vision of a world that is hopeless. Fill us with your hope by filling us with your love, and may we carry out your purposes as poorly as we are able, but as best as we are able. We ask in Jesus' name, who taught us to pray together and say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Thy nature gracious, Lord, impart. Come quickly from above. Write thy new name upon my heart, thy new best name of love.
Let's continue to worship as we share our morning gifts. Now go forth into the world in peace and be of good courage and render to no one evil for evil. Support the weak and help the afflicted and honor all of God's children, rejoicing in the power of God's Spirit. And may God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit bless us all, now and forever. Amen.